Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our session today, Strengthening HA Foundations for SEL Implementation. We're so excited to have you here with us today. So in the Hawaii Department of Education, we approach SEL as a philosophy and a way of life rooted in HA. We don't see SEL as a program, but as a process and practices that help us to strengthen our HA outcomes. SEL is a way of living and being that informs how we engage with one another in order to promote healthy schools and healthy communities. Today, we're very fortunate to have a diverse team representing different organizations to further share and explore the connection between HA and social emotional learning. So my name is Carey Tambio. I am from the Hawaii Department of Education, where I'm a social emotional learning facilitator. I'm joined today by my amazing team. I have Fern Yoshida, also from the Hawaii Department of Education. She's an educational specialist and TA administrator of the Student Support Section. Nadine Marchasalt, also from the Hawaii Department of Education. She is in health education. And we have Marisa Crowder from McCrell International. She is a researcher. And Marjorie Martin, who is a PhD from Hilo. She is an associate professor of education and also executive director of Hilo Center for Benevolent Learning Communities. We also have one other team member who's not able to be here today, Ka'anohi Kalama Macomber. She's also from the Hawaii Department of Education. She is an educational specialist for HA. Okay, so as we begin our session today, I'd like to invite you to bring your keiki into the room. Think of a student or child that you care about and envision a happy future for. So take a moment to visualize that student in your mind. What do you want for that child? I'll give you just a moment to think about that question. Visualize that child in your mind. Okay, now I'll give you a moment to turn and talk to a partner. Just share who is your child and what is one thing that you want for that child. Okay, thank you everyone. Please go ahead and finish up your conversations. Okay, I can tell from all of the conversation in the room that your child or that you were thinking of is very important to you. Please keep that child and that visual with you throughout the presentation today.
Thank you for that activity, Carey. Let's unpack why we asked you to bring that keiki into the room. When we ask you to bring your keiki into the room, we are asking you to think of a mo'olelo that has an impact on you. These mo'olelo are a part of the purpose behind why we show up and do the work that we do each and every day. At the core of strengthening HA foundations, it is important to tether to those mo'olelo that matter most to us and are most meaningful to our unique communities. These mo'olelo are the things that allow us to establish pilina. Pilina are the relationships we build between one another, our places, and the experiences that we have. When we tether to mo'olelo that are relevant, we are better able to establish pilina that are most meaningful, can be sustained, and thrive. Take a moment to read the Department of Education's most current vision and mission statements. What words jump at you or resonate with you? Let's hear a few words. Joyful. Joyful, me too. Contribute. Lifelong learners. Community. Positivity. Healthy. Now think back to the keiki that you brought into the room. Are some of the words that were shared included in that vision for your keiki?
So here is the policy enacted for Ha. I want you to pay attention. You don't have to read the whole thing, but pay attention to the bottom part here and the importance of socio-emotional well-being. By looking at this, you can see that this is why Ha must be the foundation that we build upon. Nahopana'o asks us to take a look at the conditions we are putting into place in order for the experiences that we design to be most effective. Before we can develop any systems of support, we must first look at the stories, the mo'olelo, that will guide these supports and in turn ensure that all participants in the experience feel a sense of belonging to it all. Only then will we be set up for success. So oftentimes as we learn about Ha, we think of it as like an add-on, as a mini menu of things, but it isn't, it's the foundation. These are the conditions. In 2015, the Board of Education approved this policy to advance their mission. Ha is a framework of outcomes that reflect the Department of Education's core values and beliefs in action through the public educational system of Hawaii. The DOE works together as a system that includes everyone in the broader community to develop the competencies that strengthen a sense of belonging, excellence, aloha, total well-being, and Hawaii, or breath, in ourselves, students, and others. The superintendent has articulated that the Ha components are the foundational values of our system. Take a moment to think about, what does this look like in your context? How might you establish conditions for strengthening a sense of breath, Ha, for all, in order to create a culture that is welcoming and inclusive? So now take a look at these conditions that came about as a result of No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, etc. Nahopana'o came to the system at a time where the conditions were not ideal. Due to outside influences such as Race to the Top and No Child Left Behind, we are left with these very narrow kinds of thinkings around what conditions and outcomes we're looking for. So for example, a focus on the success of the individual. Very narrow measures of academic achievement only, using a standard-based model as opposed to a community-based model, and very prescriptive curriculum and instruction. These impacts on the educational system, the absence of heart, the lack of consideration around our local context, no real safe space to innovate, no time to be reflective and have that continuous learning like we heard about in the keynote this morning. Superficial implementation of learner outcomes, widening of the achievement gap, and kind of an us versus them, a real separation because the standards become the key here, and accountability to whom is the big question, right? Versus them. So the community is no longer part of the conditions. They are separate. They are a them. So as we look at this, we can see that there's many things missing from this kind of a conception. But most importantly, what's really missing is Hawaii. All the values and the stories and experience that make us love this place that we call home. We know that strengthening communities means that we must first know the mo'olelo of the people and the places that we are working with, and with that, what their gifts are and how we might honor their abundance. Hence, this is where we start when we think about school-wide implementation of SEL. So take a moment and just kind of think about this question. How might you support the building of a strong foundation for your community to identify and implement meaningful SEL? And we start with this. We start with our assets, our gifts, and our abundance. What are all the gifts around you that might support this work? And who should be in the room when we identify these gifts? Is it just a committee, a small select few people in a room? Is it a department that just says these are the things? Who needs to be there to make these so that you know who the gifts, where the gifts are? We have the gifts all around us. Your school-wide social and emotional learning, SEL, can be a practice that can be one of these gifts, right? So one thing to really think about this then is that HA sets the conditions, the foundations, the how and the why of what it is that you do, right? And SEL practices, those are the what. So you can think of SEL as that practice, right? The vision for Hawaii Keiki is grounded on the belief that practices should be grounded in strong HA foundations. Thus, HA becomes both the starting point, but it also is the outcome. Your SEL practice can help build the skills and competencies to reach our HA system outcomes for students and adults.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to take us a step back for a moment to think about why social emotional development and well-being has become the focus of so many educators and education systems across the United States and abroad. This is due in part to over 30 years of research that has shown that when students have strong social and emotional skills, when they can manage their negative emotions, build and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions for themselves and their community, they can show up to their learning environments ready and willing to learn. We also know that we are recovering from a global pandemic that has taken students away from their safe spaces, away from their teachers and their peers, to the extent that youth are reporting higher rates of anxiety and depression. The good news is that research also tells us that these skills are teachable. Under the right learning conditions and with the right tools, teachers can grow these skills in their students. So that's what social and emotional learning is, or that's what we're talking about, is that process through which both children and adults learn to acquire those skills and apply those skills so that they can manage those negative emotions, build those relationships, and make responsible decisions. Stemming from that 30 years of research is a growing awareness that the social emotional aspects of our lives as human is grounded in our context. It's based on our cultural background, our family background, and where we live. So that what it means to be socially and emotionally competent might look different depending on where we are. We also know that when students see themselves in their classroom, in their teachers' practices, in their curricula, when they can recognize that their culture and their funds of knowledge are being elevated to help and support the learning of themselves and their peers, they get excited to learn, they're more engaged. So that's what we're talking about today, is how we can use HA as a lens through which to guide our development of our social and emotional learning initiatives, our health initiatives, all of our work that we're doing to support the whole child so that they can feel connected to their learning, their classroom, their community, and have a stronger sense of Hawaii. So with that, I'll turn it over to Fern.
All right, so now what, right? So we discussed HA And Ha being the foundation for what we do, it helps set the learning conditions by which our students and our staff can thrive within a healthy Ha environment. We discussed how socio-emotional learning then can build the competencies for our students and our adults to practice and live Ha. So kipuka is something that came about through our commitment to moving forward with Ha, being intentional as part of other practices that we already have in place that are necessary and have been operational for many years within our schools. So in effort to take steps forward and advance Ha and integrate it within our practices that we have in place, we as a department applied to be part of a cohort that was led by the Castle Group and CCSSO. We were awarded a seat with 8 other states, and our effort was to move forward with this integrated system to address the whole child and equitable outcomes for all of our students, and again, always grounded in our local context. And that was the whole point of that. So this became our message. And our commitment to ensuring that Ha is in the forefront, while at the same time utilizing the continuous school improvement process, our already in place multi-tiered system of support by which social-emotional learning is one of the domains of that, ensuring that safe and supportive learning environment to promote capacity building, engagement of our students, so ultimately we can achieve student success. Another outcome of this effort is our Ha-based social-emotional learning guide. And I am extremely appreciative to be part of our many groups. One is within the department. So as Carey mentioned, we have a group of people from OHE, from our curriculum and instruction office, from our school transformation branch that really put our time together and invested in a collaborative approach to addressing Ha and social-emotional learning. And then beyond that, we were so grateful to have McGrill International, the Hawaii Community Foundation, P20, all these wonderful gurus that, and Hilo that really came together, brought their expertise and their lens to put together this guide. And as you can see, it's a 5-part guide that starts with Ha. How do we approach our community and the gifts that our community brings and our goals together collectively to then advance our we and why for the context of each school community, by which then we can infuse our social-emotional learning goals and outcomes and then go through that iterative improvement process. So that's kind of what this guide does for you. So that is available actually on our public HiDewey site. And if you didn't have a chance yet to receive the handouts, it's on the corner of the room there. And there's a pamphlet with resource links for you, and the guide is part of that, along with others. And Kipuka is there as well. So here's an example of our attempt and our goal to move forward with another integrated initiative as part of Kipuka. So this is a specific one to address student well-being and mental health support. And as you can see, it's another approach by which we collaborate together with our school-based behavioral health, integrating of social-emotional learning, and Hazel Health, which is a community-based supplemental resource that we have, along with the Center for Cognitive Behavior Therapy, which helps build the capacity of our staff, health education, You Matter resources so that students have access to resources that are out there in the community, and so much more. So all of that is also available in the corner there for you to access. But again, it's all about the collaboration and the harvesting of expertise and kuleana of many of our people, because it truly does take a village for us to work together and support and help our students thrive. So in thinking about all of that, Nadine is going to come up and we're going to think of the context of our own communities and this activity.
Thank you. So as you can tell, context really matters when it comes to applying HA, when it comes to thinking about kipuka and the educational ecosystem where you are. We're going to give everyone a chance to think through some guiding questions regarding your kipuka and the context you'd like to focus on for today. So what we're going to have you do, sorry, we got some humid Post-its not sticking, but I want you to look at the words on the screen and think about which of the contexts you'd like to focus in on for the next conversation. Do you want to focus on strengthening relationships with students, strengthening relationships with families, strengthening professional relationships within the school, strengthening relationships with community? So choose one of those contexts, have that in your mind. Got it? Now we're going to think through some questions, and we'll give you folks time to move to a corner of the room. I'll tell you where those corners are in a little bit, and talk with a small group of 3 to 4 people. So this is time now to do some reflection, thinking about the context you chose and where you are at your schools and communities and systems. Think about your ideal kipuka. What are the components in your ideal kipuka or educational ecosystem that support this context? Take a moment to reflect on that. If it helps, you can jot notes or keep them in your mind. Next, consider the conditions that allow people, places, and their relationships with one another to thrive. What are the necessary conditions to strengthen Ha in that kipuka, your ideal kipuka? Next, consider the gifts at the individual and collective community level, both within and beyond your school or your system, including people, spaces, resources, assets, and other sources of abundance. What are some of the gifts of your community that might support that kipuka? Yes.
I'm struggling a little bit with the usage of kipuka. Only so if you could help me understand that a little bit better, because I learned it more as like it's that like within a lava flow where everything is dead and barren. There's like a kipuka on the native forest where like the nipo is starting to be populated. So are you kind of saying like the school is like the barren lava field and it's resprout and regenerate necessarily?
Yeah, and I'll actually invite our group to also address that question. I think part of what we're considering is what Fern shared earlier. There are many initiatives that happen within educational ecosystems. How can we find connections, collaborations with all of them so they can better integrate rather than be separate, competing initiatives and programs? Other thoughts?
I
And it is really. So in working with Ohei, it's the idea of in nature, it takes many elements and the right conditions to ensure that there's that regeneration and preservation of that native forest environment. Thus, in connection or metaphor with the department and our schools, then it involves us utilizing the existing practices and the strengths of existing practices coming together to ensure fruitful outcomes for our students.
I appreciate the question. It's really a mind shift, I think, to bring that metaphor into educational settings and thinking about what are those conditions, the abundance and the resources, the gifts that can really help our students and all of the components of our ecosystem to thrive and flourish. So as we go back to these questions, take a moment to reflect on those. We're going to have you move to a corner of the room to have a small group conversation with others that also want to focus on those contexts. So if you are interested in focusing on strengthening relationships with community, you're going to move here in a little bit. If you are interested in strengthening relationships with families, you're going to go to that back corner. If you're interested in strengthening professional relationships within schools, that corner. And then strengthening relationships with students here in the front. All right, we're gonna have 10 minutes for small group conversation, and then we'll share out as a larger group so we can all learn and grow together. Ready? Find your corner.
Perfect example.
Second question, just an idea of conditions of Let me give you the card right now. But yeah, we're even talking about the cheering center out
Two more minutes. 2 more minutes. Thank you, everybody. Bring your conversations to a close. Thank you, everyone, for engaging in these conversations. Please bring them to a close. And you can stay where you are. We'd like to hear a few share outs by corner. Thank you so much. I'd like us to start in community. It's probably the largest of the 4 types of contexts that we're really considering. So we'd like to start there, and then we'll be moving clockwise throughout the room to just hear some of the highlights from the conversations.
I was just sharing that one of the groups that we have been trying, I work with the Migrant Education Program, and one of the groups on our island that's underrepresented is the Marshallese community. And so we tried various ways of contacting and engaging with the families, but now next week I'm going to just go out to Yoshida. They're having a community event out there. It's a literacy event. We're going out there. We're going to bring some bilingual materials and things and start to try to build a relationship. I don't think they trust us or are aware of what we can offer them. Our program offers services from birth through age 21. And so just instead of trying to have the families come to the school and us sending home flyers and things, we're just going to try going to them and try to start building relationships there where they'll feel hopefully safer and more welcoming to us. So, and then I also had some friends here that asked for my business card and they might be able to help me with endeavors. So it was good.
Thank you so much for sharing. Back corner, we have families, strengthening relationships with families.
So similar to what they shared in that other group, it's important to have that, I guess, environment where the families feel welcome and feel like they're part of the school system, and that they feel welcome, and because of that, they will, be able to volunteer to help and things. We talked about conditions to strengthen it, and we talked about making sure as a school we plan and create opportunities for families to be part of the learning. Family night, math family night, or we hold also student-led portfolio conferences, and the parents hold a big part in that presentation, and it's not just the teacher talking about their child, it's the child talking to the parents, and so they're involved in the child's education and are part of the learning and part of the schooling.
Thank you so much. Strengthening professional relationships within schools.
We talked about the importance of having trust within everyone, and also that we also mentioned about I was reading the book The Art of Coaching by Elena Aguilar, and it was talking about how in order for us to move our students forward, we have to meet the needs of all the adults on campus, whether it be their social needs, their emotional needs. And once that is in place, then we can focus on driving students and moving them forward. So we had a lot of discussion about different things that our communities and our strengths. And I think that training that we had yesterday and today, we talked about, and it was really eye-breaking, about how everybody has gifts. And I think that when we look at our staff and we look at our community within our school, value in every single person on that campus, will we truly be able to move forward? Because without one part, we cannot move forward. And in one of the breakout sessions, it talked about who's the most important person on your campus. Is it your principal? And I was thinking, I said, I'm like, a custodian, because I hate dirty bathrooms. But then that custodian is important, and that cafeteria is important, because all the workers in it, they don't show up, like the kids would be hungry. And then you have brother, like, I don't eat, I'm grouchy, like, oh my gosh, you know? So like every person has an important role. The Sasa, I mean, if she doesn't do her job, bills don't get paid, we don't have electricity. You know, so every single person is important, and understanding that we all gotta work together in order to move forward and trust in each other. And I think that's hard to develop, especially after so much time away from mingling with people. And right now we don't even have a faculty center that we can all meet. So we're doing it through Zoom. It was great during the pandemic, but now it sucks. You know, like you can't read people, they can't read you, and you can't stop anybody from doing other work at that time. So I think it being there not only physically but mentally and in every part is one way that we can develop and trust us again. Thank you.
Mahalo. Let's bring it to students, and then I'll open it up in case anybody else wanted to share something, because we went rather quickly through the groups. Students?
Well, I guess I'll share a little bit for our group. One of the things that I heard that is really important to have in the Kapuka for students is really being able to hear that student voice. So, giving the students that opportunity to share what they're feeling, what they're going through as teachers in the classroom, making that time and space to check in with the students and really hear their stories of who they are. And also in the classroom, thinking about our pedagogical practices. How are we including practices that are SEL informed, that are enabling the students to interact and build their social emotional skills? Like, are we allowing the kids to work in small groups, to have, engaging discussions? How are we really engaging students through our pedagogical practices? So those are a couple of things that we talked about. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to share something with the whole group? I see Marjorie's pointing at. Okay. Would anyone from that group like to share a highlight from your conversation? It's just an opportunity if you would like to take a couple minutes.
Oh, I guess with the schools is, kind of piggybacking on what she was saying, that everyone has a piece of the puzzle that makes the whole, like the vehicle, right? And it's kind of bringing everything together from yesterday, we were talking about the bus and the inclusion and everything. So it's kind of making those connections in the school, and everyone has a gift, right? And finding the strengths that people have to offer within your school. And I guess the challenge is now is kind of facilitating how are we gonna, get people on that bus or get on that vehicle and move forward, right? We're during the back then we're trying to build the plane while it's in the air. Now, we're kind of have the foundation and restarting to bring a perfect opportunity to kind of, reflect, become aware of what our gifts are, what the school has, the resources within their students, the communities, the families, and what can they bring to the table to make our school communities grow and thrive.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think one of the themes of all of the sharing, and including the session that we had yesterday, which this is a repeat of, is that one of the themes is connections to people, connections to places, connections to generations, and how we can tap into all of those mo'olelo to strengthen the connections and relationships to better support our students and thriving communities. So by gathering these mo'olelo of your community, you begin to identify, nurture, and strengthen your kipuka, which will in turn help to guide your practice moving forward. So stay where you are one moment, and we'll have Carey bring us into a closing for our session.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for all of the rich conversations and for sharing all of those beautiful insights. As we close our session today, we would like you to think again about the keiki that you brought into the room at the beginning of our session and that you carried with you throughout our session. What is one word that resonates with you from our conversation today that will benefit and support your keiki? Take a moment to think of your word, and then please go ahead and share it with your small group. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for everything that you shared today. Thank you for being a part of our session, and we wish that you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.